Ladies and gentlemen, in the room and online, good afternoon to all of you. My name is Christine Pomerantz. I'm the chair of the Department of International Trade and Marketing for the Fashion Industries, also known as ITM, which belongs to Fashion Institute of Technology's J. and Patty Baker School of Business and Technology. I am pleased to welcome you to New York Fashion and Beauty Entrepreneurs International Business as the opening event of the 26th season of the Talking Trade at FIT Guest Lecture Series on the occasion of New York Fashion Week. Our next event is on international trade post-election to be held on Thursday, May 4th from 6:30 to 8 p.m. at FIT's boardroom at the Marvin Feldman Center, the building next door. So for those of you who are interested in attending that event, we have flyers up front, so feel free to pick them up. It is my privilege to introduce the team that made this event possible. First, we are honored to be partnering with Congresswoman Carolyn Maloney and her team comprised of Mina Elias, Jennifer Bell, and Chris Gorod in Washington, D.C., who worked behind the scenes. Representing her office today is Larson Binzer. Larson, can you stand up to be recognized by the audience? Thank you. Okay, next, as we call your names, please stand up to be acknowledged by the audience. Representing the New York District Export Council, or New York DEC, are Joe Schoonmaker, Chair, Carmela Mamas, Executive Secretary of the New York DEC and Director of the U.S. Commercial Service U.S. Export Assistance Center, whose team members, Dr. Anastasia Senyas and Melissa Hill, enthusiastically contributed to this event. Nancy Plager, who is, okay, there you are, Nancy, who is wearing several hats as New York District Export Council Legislative Committee member. We also have Miles here, who is also wearing many hats. Nancy is also part of the World Trade Week Steering Committee, as well as Executive Director of the International Women's Entrepreneurial Challenge, who is with us today. And from FIT, okay, you're gonna hear a lot of names here. We wish to acknowledge the contribution of Taryn Rayholick, Mary Olenikzak, Ann Elmer, and then our team behind, Richard Hoare, Mike Zervas, Anna Gaynor, Amanda Barlow, Susie Baer, J.C. Campbell, Brian Strickland. And then we have Virginia Bonifilio, Bill Reinish, Sonia Chapman, Shireen Musa, Luz Pascal, Stacy Sederias, and her team of volunteers, Bianca Villanueva, Juan Fernandez, William Rossi, Oriana Serrano, and Brianna Stania of ITM. Quite a crew. On the occasion of New York Fashion Week, in connection with this event's focus on international entrepreneurs, we want to express our appreciation for how productively our keynote speaker has worked with us, our collaborators, and the small to medium-sized businesses entrepreneurs as follows. Congresswoman Maloney supported an educational program for exporters, which the Manhattan Chamber of Commerce, at that time under the leadership of Nancy Plager, managed. She presented at the International Women's Entrepreneurial Challenge Conference featuring women business owners from the New York City area and from around the world. She presented at the International Women's Entrepreneurial Challenge and the World Trade Week, which the President of the United States declares every third week in May, and presented awards for a number of years at the New York DEC's Kickoff Breakfast, which attracts some 260 industry players and leaders. By the way, this year's breakfast is on Monday, May 8th, from 8:30 to 11 a.m. at Baruch College. For those of you who are interested in attending and or partnering with the New York DEC, see Nancy Plager over here. Raise your hand. Yes. and Carmela Mamas, okay, as well as myself for details. And locally, Congresswoman Maloney supported and procured initial federal funding for the Second Avenue subway. Okay. So, against this backdrop, here to introduce Congresswoman Maloney's taped keynote address is our energetic Dean of the J. and Patty Baker School of Business and Technology, Stephen Frumkin.
I think Christine named everybody who's in the audience. 26 years of doing an event like this and all of the other contributions that Christine Pomerantz has made, not only to the Baker School of Business and Technology, but to the Fashion Institute of Technology, I think deserves an individual round of applause. Now she'll be nice to me for a couple of weeks. So let me wish you a good afternoon and a welcome to FIT. If you haven't been here before, it's quite a place. You ought to have somebody give you a tour, meet some of our students and faculty. And to Talking Trade at FIT, the Fashion and Beauty Entrepreneurs International Business Event. It is my pleasure to open the program and welcome our keynote speaker. The Talking Trade event is sponsored by a number of organizations, senior international trade specialists from the Department of Commerce, the Women's International Entrepreneur Challenge, New York District Export Council, as well as FIT's Baker School of Business and Technology, the Cosmetics and Fragrance Marketing Department, and the International Trade and Marketing Department. And I guess also the Entrepreneurship Department. William is here. So the Baker School of Business and Technology is committed to transforming the fashion and allied industries in their business management, research through leadership, globally by providing responsible principles of management in the education framework for all people, developing learning communities around the world, and teaching sustainable developmental goals. Our global community thrives on a commitment to global knowledge through the free movement of students, teachers, and researchers by a free exchange of global ideas. Our keynote speaker has been a champion of the fashion and allied industries in New York and the United States. First elected to Congress in 1992, Carolyn B. Maloney is recognized as a national leader with extensive accomplishments on financial services, national security, the economy, and women's issues. She has been a senior member of both the House Financial Services Committee, the House Oversight and Government Reform Committee, and a ranking member of the Joint Economic Committee. New York City has no stronger advocate in Congress than Congresswoman Maloney. She has delivered over $7 billion in federal aid to New York City in just the last 10 years, including hundreds of millions of dollars each for two of the largest transit projects, one of which was just mentioned, the Second Avenue Subway and the East Side Access Project, both of which run through her district and have helped create thousands of jobs in New York. Most recently, over $300 million in federal grants were directed to high-speed rail improvement. These projects in the Sunnyside rail yards in Queens will help remove a bottleneck toward high-speed rail in the Northeast Corridor. A champion of women's issues and a first-degree black belt in Taekwondo. It is my high honor and privilege to introduce to you, through the magic of video technology, United States Representative of the 12th Congressional District of New York, Congresswoman Carol Maloney.
The fashion industry, to me, is the core of New York's identity. In many ways, the streets of New York are runways. New Yorkers from all walks of life, from different cultures and backgrounds, share their take on fashion every day on our streets. And I just love that about our city. The creativity, the inspiration, and the trendsetters. And fashion is also a core component of our city's economy. I'm the top Democrat on the Joint Economic Committee, and over the last few years during Fashion Week, I've issued several reports about the impact that the industry has on our economy. And I can tell you in one word, what we found it to be is huge. We are the undisputed fashion capital of the United States, and I would say really the world. We have more than 900 fashion companies headquartered in New York City. We have the top fashion and design schools in the country, especially FIT. 40% of all U.S. designers work and live in the New York City area. The fashion industry overall employs more than 180,000 people in our great city, which is more than 5% of our private sector jobs. And we have Fashion Week twice a year, which draws more than 200,000 attendees each year and generates $900 million in economic activity. More than the U.S. Open, the Marathon, and even the 2014 Super Bowl. The New York City fashion industry has an amazing story to tell, but as shown by my report, the industries experience a great deal of changes. Advanced manufacturing, more emphasis on research and development, new marketing channels, and increased competition are reshaping the industry and leading to a resurgence of fashion-related jobs in the U.S., especially higher-paying design-related jobs that add value to your products. So we can't rest on our laurels if we're going to remain on top. All of us, from our schools and our businesses to policymakers alike, must continue to support the fashion industry and its small businesses and entrepreneurs. That's why I'm so pleased to participate in events like this and to support the important work of FIT and our other collaborators. And it's why I'm grateful to know that industry leaders and advocates like Dean Frumkin and FIT host important discussions like this. Thank you for the critical role you play in the fashion industry and New York's economy. I will continue to do all I can in Congress to support you, the creators and innovators at the forefront of growing this important industry. I'm restarting the Congressional Fashion Caucus, and we're going to be pushing policies that support the industry, including making college more affordable and allowing people to refinance student loans, and expanding access to finance that allows young entrepreneurs to open their businesses. Because you can't get off the ground if you're buried in debt and have no money to start your own company. That's why I have a bill that I call the Micro Biz Act that would provide more federal funding to community development financial institutions, organizations that extend credit to entrepreneurs and small business owners who want to work in underserved communities. These organizations have had a huge impact in every borough in New York, but they're hamstrung by a lack of funding, and my bill would fix that. But we also have to look outward, beyond our own shores. The fashion industry is global, and if we're going to compete and win with our international competitors, we need policies that promote fashion exports. After all, the U.S. represents just 5% of the world's population. There are a lot of people to dress out there in the world, and I want them all wearing New York designers. That's why I've championed important programs like the Export-Import Bank and our regional export assistance centers, which help businesses large and small find new opportunities to compete in the global marketplace. I'm so impressed by the dynamic energy of the fashion industry. It epitomizes New York, and I'm committed to making sure that it can continue to grow and create jobs right here in our city. I look forward to working with all of you to keep New York the fashion capital of the United States and our country ahead of the trends. Thank you and good luck.
So thank you very much, Woman Maloney, for that invigorating address. And now it is my pleasure to introduce my esteemed colleague, Professor Virginia Bonafilio, Chair of the Department of Cosmetics and Fragrance Marketing, which is also part of the J. and Patty Baker School of Business and Technology. Professor Bonafilio will introduce and moderate our distinguished panel.
Good afternoon, everybody. We're so glad you could join us here at Talking Trade at FIT. I'm sure you've had an opportunity to read the bios of our esteemed panel, and it's now my pleasure to introduce them and ask them to come and join me on the stage. Professor Joanne DeMartini, Vice President of Jump Design. Dr. Josh Gordon, Founder and CEO of Noya Cosmetics. Ms. Olga Vidasheva, Founder and CEO of Shopteeks.com. And Carolina Zmarlak, Designer and Founder of Carolina Zmarlak. Thank you all for joining us. And I'd like to turn the podium over to Carolina, who's going to kind of walk us through her design aesthetic.
Hello, everyone. So my brand's name is Carolina Zmarlak, and I'm actually an FIT alum. And 7 years into my ready-to-wear business, we are a women's wear designer, ready-to-wear company that really focuses on, I would say, very modernist, minimalist, sleek women's wear that from the beginning has had this idea how to personalize and make every single piece available, very personal to the client. And we started by having our first capsule of 10 looks from our very first collection be fully reversible or convertible. And that idea is what we continue with even now as we've grown into a full, much bigger collection. So,
Would you like to show your video?
sure.
Yeah.
We have a video from our film from this past cycle, which we have just shown. And this, for us, our films have really been a language that connects us really not only to our very localized business, but as well throughout the country and internationally. So we love focusing on film, really showcasing our value system, our language, and then really connecting with our greater audience.
mixed up. We're looking for you to tell us something about your journey with Shoptiques and also about the Y Incubator in Silicon Valley.
Hi guys, so glad to be here. My name is Olga Vidasheva and I run a company called Shoptiques.com. I started it almost 5 years ago actually, which feels like it was yesterday. Shoptiques lets you shop the world's best local boutiques online. So it used to be if you lived in New York and you wanted to shop in Paris, London, Miami, you literally had to buy a plane ticket, fly there and discover unique local boutiques that carry product that you can't find online. And so when I was in business school, I was obsessed with boutique shopping because I loved finding something that nobody else had and really speaking my story through what I was wearing and expressing myself that way. And I said, how come the stores are not online? And so the answer to that has been a journey for the last 5 years. I wrote a business plan at Harvard Business School, and it turned out it's a huge market. These unique stores have the most unique inventory because they're able to buy in very small buys. And what they were lacking is actually infrastructure to do business, from shipping to photography to fulfillment. But what they were great at is actually merchandising, which I am definitely not a merchant. Probably a lot of you are, given you out of IT. And I said, okay, I can figure out the hard, boring stuff of the business. And it's been an incredible journey because we've started with 25 local stores in New York City. When I launched, you could see little paths that I took, go store to store with my presentation and this big dream of creating a worldwide community of online shops where you can go in and discover Bali and Paris and get plates from Morocco and kind of have the whole world at your fingertips. And now we have stores in 12 countries. We have over 5,000 little boutiques that we feature on the site that we hand-selected ourselves for their unique point of view. And it's been an incredible journey. So many of you may be starting a business now. One of the things that I did, which was the best decision ever, was applying to an incubator called Y Combinator. Companies like Dropbox, Reddit, Airbnb all started out of Y Combinator. And it's very similar to probably an institution, but it's a kind of intense 3-week program where you get selected into it. I was their first single non-technical founder, so even if you don't code, you can apply there. And it's been really cool because a really large part of what makes Shoptiques is technology, because without technology, I wouldn't really know where that unique piece of the item is in the world. I wouldn't know if this plates from Morocco are actually still available or if somebody bought them locally. And so going into a business where I knew not much about, being part of a community that knew everything about. One of the partners there was the creator of Gmail, Paul Bucat, and a lot of other amazing kind of leaders. It really allowed me to build Shoptiques and build technology that really now differentiates us from anywhere else online and able to do a global business. We now ship to 35 countries. So if anytime you need something unique, go check out Shoptiques.
Thank you. Josh, you are a serial entrepreneur. So tell us how you came to Noya Cosmetics.
Sure. First, thanks for the word serial entrepreneur. I don't know if that's 100% true yet, but it definitely will be one day. It is true that I have a few businesses, and I guess my main story and point is that you can do anything you want, even with student debt and even without money. I originally grew up in Brooklyn as a kid. We moved to Israel, and I served in the army for a couple of years as a sergeant in the infantry. Came here back to the States, went to Columbia, got a bachelor's in neuroscience. Then I proceeded to medical school at NYU. And at a certain point, I tell people I looked at the contract ad with my mother, and it said I had to be a doctor when I grow up, but she didn't say I had to practice. So it was time to move on. I discovered that that wasn't what made me happy. I already knew as an entrepreneur in my heart, it's a tough step to take. It's scary, especially if everyone around you is doing the corporate thing. And especially in medical school, where you invest a lot of time and definitely a lot of money. If someone wants to get a sense, my student debt when I started my business was about $400,000, just to give you a sense of where we stand. And somewhere in the third year of medical school, they let us out of the cage about one day a year, and I went to the beach and I got a burn on my head. And I looked for a hairstyling product with sunscreen protection. I thought it was pretty obvious that it existed, and it turns out that it didn't. Anywhere, and that didn't make sense to me because you have sunscreen in every single personal care product out there, from skin to lips to eyes to face, whatever you'd like, and there was my idea. Now the catch is, how do you do that without any money? I had a credit card at the time, and I decided I'm going to figure out a way to do it with the credit card. The credit card limit was $10,000. I wound up, after graduating medical school, I started a permanent hair removal business. I subletted a room at a spa at the time, built a little bit of cash flow, made the hairstyling products. Along the way, Noya came to life, and that's really the main work that I do now is Noya. Noya is a brand of natural cosmetics in eco-friendly bamboo packaging. We also make the first fully edible cosmetic in the world. So cosmetics currently are really unregulated in the United States. Thank you. Truth is, people think the United States has a lot of safety and regulations behind it in the cosmetics industry, and the truth is that's not really the case. Almost everyone here, you can go home, make a product, make a lip balm, make a lipstick, and you can make it in your kitchen in the same pot that you made soup and sell it, and that's mostly legal, which is kind of crazy. And people consume a lot of this stuff over their life. Like, you eat pounds of lip care over your life. And kind of think of it, it's crazy that there's no real regulations. So what we have now we have a bunch of lip balms that are actually made in a commercial kitchen, carry a nutritional label, and they qualify both as a food and a cosmetic. Together with that, we use eco-friendly bamboo packaging, which I don't have a film, but you're welcome to go to our Instagram and check out our design aesthetics, which I'll be honest has really helped us get into stores. So currently we're in about 100 stores in the United States. We're selling into Korea for about 20 stores. We're selling cross-border e-commerce in China. We're in a lot of negotiations currently with Japan, Russia, Israel, and a bunch of other countries. And the main thing, and that's the exciting thing for me, is the whole investment that went into Noya. Currently, we're at about low seven figures. We have about 7 staff. It was $2,000. That's all it took. And the way it kind of happened was I saw an opportunity on the market, called a couple of distributors. Someone believed in my idea and gave me a purchase order before I actually had a product. And then I had to scramble. I had 2 months to come up with a brand name, trademark it, formula the whole thing, which was kind of scary, but it happened. So I guess the main thing that I try to pass along is you don't need experience. I'm a dude and I make lipsticks for a living. You don't need money. You don't need experience at all. I made a lot of mistakes, and it's true. We messed up a bunch of times, but it's fine. You learn along the way, and it's fun. You should totally do it. Yeah, that's my story.
Hi, Professor DeMartini. How did Jump become an international player?
Well, the story with Jump is that it was a complete accident that Jump became an international vendor. 23 years ago, a buyer from El Corte Inglés New York office wandered into the showroom and placed orders in the thousands with Jump, and then nursed Glenn Schlossberg through the growing pains of learning how to export to a foreign country. We became quickly El Corte Inglés' #1 vendor in the Fiesta department, and then eventually sold other departments as well. When I joined the company, that was already a success, but we weren't in any other countries other than the South American countries that came to the showroom themselves. So through the efforts of Anastasia Llanos and the U.S. Commercial Service, we talked about a gold key. We knew we wanted to go to Germany because there was certainly a market for social occasion there, which was our main product. And the gold key, they made the appointments, and we traveled there directly. That's what's unique about Jump's business, is that unlike many companies that believe they have to go through an agent or a salesman in the foreign country, we treated the buyers just like they were Macy's, Lord & Taylor, or Nordstrom's. We flew there, we had an appointment, and it was history. We got into our target market. At the time it was Peek & Kloppenburg, and to this day, we are one of their biggest vendors out of the US, and we're talking about 12 years ago. From there, we were such a success that the US Commercial Service, again, brought us a new account, QVC in Europe, which is out of Dusseldorf. So that all of this is situated in Dusseldorf. At that time, I had brought our daytime career dress line, and the wonderful, beautiful designer who was designing it, and they fell in love with the line, and they fell in love with her, and offered us an hour on their channel, their shopping channel. A month before that show, she resigned, and Glenn looked at me and said, well, you do it. So I went on air. We sold, they had planned an hour for daytime dresses. Now, this was the peak of the daytime dress market. That hour it never happened. We sold out in 40 minutes, okay? So the success became one after another after another. From there, QVC UK brought us in, and we quickly became one of the top vendors on the entire site with our profile, Made in New York. And from there, they opened in Italy, again, one of the top vendors in Italy. What's most exciting about this story is that QVC then bought into 49% of one of the biggest shopping channels in China, CNR Mall, Chinese National Radio Mall, and then wanted us to go. So we, as a vendor, have actually manufactured in New York City daytime dresses and some social. They sell some social in China, and we ship our goods to China. That's kind of an odd story. So one of the things we stand for, we do manufacture in other countries. We do have international businesses that go from point A in China to point B in the UK or in Germany. But the fact that we manufacture at least 50% here in the States has really been our calling card. In China, we're not the biggest business, but we have the highest productivity, because every time they say Made in USA and I point to the Made in New York label, the sales go through the roof. In fact, we have a commercial that the UK filmed a few years ago. JC, you got that for me on YouTube? Where is it? This commercial was actually a 3-minute commercial. This is only part of it that ended up making it on YouTube. But what's interesting is that it plays in every market and is dubbed over in the language of the market. So it's kind of exciting. And it's all about New York being the center of fashion. Well, New York has been the center of fashion for not just the United States, but really for the world for a very long time. Being in New York, which is the mecca for all the creative talent in the United States, people come here to live and work not just in the fashion district, but also in the theater district, in music. We just have really a lot of creative people here. I live in the suburbs, but the minute I get off the train, the pulse starts. We just walk fast. We do everything fast, because it's about getting things done here in New York. We are in the middle of the fashion district, right here on Broadway, but 7th Avenue is only a half block away. I've worked in all those buildings, and every area has its own pulse, its own magic. Thank you very much. So everyone has kind of told their story. And now let's get down to some more hardcore questions. What were the challenges? What were the challenges to going international for all of you guys? Was there a challenge? Was it easy? What did you do? Did you have to change a lot of things? Change your messaging, change your branding to go international?
I can start.
Yeah.
So going international, I think kind of 3 major things that you have to think about. One is it has to be culturally appropriate. So we've been very careful how we expand it because, obviously I wasn't born here, as you can tell by my accent. I think that speaking the right language, the same language that local people speak, is so important and just a sign of respect. So we started expanding really English-speaking countries, which has been easier. Started with Canada, then we went to UK to really just get our feet dirty and really just to see if we can even do it. And so kind of be really conscious around cultural and language differences. Number two is obviously pricing. You have to make sure that whatever the price is, however you importing or exporting, there are duties and taxes. I think it's completely miserable customer experience when you get your package and they say, oh, you have to pay duties on this, and there's another $70 at the door, and you're like, what are you talking about? And so I think we took the approach where until we were ready to show the customer the price that would include all of the duties and taxes and all the whatever legal stuff and sales taxes that they had to be incorporated, we wouldn't really go into it. So don't do it halfway, really incorporate that. And then the third one that we actually have not tackled on our site, but like we really want to go and expand to Japan, but they read right to left. So there's so much technological changes that we would have to make to our site that we haven't even, we've started thinking about it, but it's really difficult. And so I think that the number one priority was, and I'm not even talking about, like we did logistics, so we ship within 2 days anywhere in the world, but I think you have to just put your customer's hat on. One of our number one principles at the office is think like a customer. The customer always comes first. And so if you're going to expand internationally, really do your research and make sure that that customer is going to have the same exact experience or even better than your customer who's coming in from the US and speaks the language.
Does anybody else want to weigh in on that?
I'll weigh in because we're kind of on the opposite spectrum of the international story. I think for us, as a designer, we have gone to China, for example, to Shanghai, and have shipped to a beautiful store called Alter, and we've gone to Canada and worked with Essence, and it was kind of, we went into it almost as a, try and see what happens type of thing. And for us as a small brand without sort of a global way to advertise and market, it was definitely, the difficulty was in the fact as to how to really build this community that we have here in New York as well as in the States with our clientele, and really have the one-on-one and building relationships very personally with our clients who come back season after season after season, how to really do that internationally. And so that sort of from the very beginning was the challenge, and we sort of said to ourselves, I think the most important thing is to really do it locally and within our country first, and really be on the ground and have work through very personal events, if it's trunk shows within stores, or if it's pop-ups where we collaborate with other designers and build a sort of close-knit tribe where women are really getting the experience of, feeling, touching, getting the story and our brand values, as well as hosting events and style outs, and so really going into a market internationally. It would definitely, as you're saying, you have to have a plan, and I think for us, it would have to be us being on the ground for a very specific time, not only ourselves and really connecting directly with the client, but also in the type of training that we would do. I mean, you and I spoke earlier about the fact that even when we are going into a new store within the States, especially a bigger store like a department store, there's a definite disconnect with the designer, the store, and the client. And it's very difficult for a designer to just look at a sales report where all you see is numbers to really know who is behind that purchase. Who is this woman? Who am I connecting with? Who's connecting with me? And so that's sort of the thing that we keep working on, but we look at ourselves more as a design firm where it is very important for us to have the one-on-one just as an architect would with their client when they're building out a home or a building. So.
I'll jump in if I can. First of all, the opposite of the challenge, I'll echo something that Joanne mentioned, that the fact that our products are made in the USA has changed everything for us internationally. The demand for USA-made products is incredible, and it is tempting sometimes to make stuff in China or any other country, and it might be cheaper. But at least in my opinion, that will limit the opportunities abroad, especially, for example, for Chinese consumers. They don't trust their own products. They look for natural products and organic products, especially in the United States. And that holds true for all the countries with whom we have this love-hate relationship, such as Russia. So yeah, we might butt heads sometimes, but they actually want USA-made products. Same holds true for China, thank you, and a bunch of other countries. So consider the cost-benefit advantage of making stuff in the United States versus abroad. Another advantage of making stuff in the States is that you do get a lot of help by the government, for example. And the same thing, the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, who are here, Melissa and Carmela, have been very helpful in getting us the deals both in China, and they're also helping us in other countries around the world. I think in terms of challenges, at least for us, one of the big the things that's hard is meeting distributors or key players who want to carry your brand if you are relatively small and unknown. One of the things that a lot of international consumers want are very known brands. It's part of their social status or whatever you'd like to call it. They have less of an appreciation for the artisanal trend that's happening here in the United States, and that's definitely something challenging that you have to get around. More specifically in terms of cosmetics, this is something that we recently encountered in China. Every single shade that I thought would sell well there, because it sells well here, it was the complete 100% opposite. 100% opposite, and now we're actually developing shades that are appropriate for the market. So they are more subtle in Asia, so everything here that is more bold doesn't really go there. I think women are not even allowed to wear cosmetics in school all the way through college, so you can't even target the young 20 demographic because they're not going to buy your stuff. So just appreciation, just as you said, for the local market and targeting it specifically is also pretty important.
Our challenge was a little different. We found the opposite, but beauty is certainly different than apparel. We found that our strength was our bestseller report from all the stores in the United States. And that if we sold those bestsellers to our accounts overseas, they literally would sell very well for them as well. In fact, we had one dress that literally was a bestseller in every country in the world, and is still actually being sold over the last 8 years. Where our challenge was not even language buyer to buyer, okay? Most of the buyers we dealt with spoke English in every country, in Italy, in Germany. And when they didn't, there was a language of fashion. I was telling this story last night to my class where I understood what the buyer and her assistant were talking about in German. No, I don't know, I know 2 words in German. But I understood the language of fashion. And we were looking at a specific dress, and I knew exactly what they were trying to say. Where we had language issues, though, were kind of scary. We once shipped to Canada, which we ship in English and in French, wash with peas. Okay, because our vendor's translation was incorrect. We then eventually made sure that all content labels were approved by the store itself, because it wasn't just even the language. We might have had the right words, we didn't have the right idiom, the way it's put together. Fit-wise, there were some challenges, although not that many. Most of Europe works on the same hourglass figure that we use in the United States, which we call a Missy fit. We did have to extend the length for Germany. Our average height is much taller. And in the UK, where the average height is actually basically the same as the US, they are more traditional and wear clothes longer. So length was always added. In Germany, they have very thin arms, so our armholes had to go up. That was always a challenge. That was always in the fit comments. But where we totally blew it was in China. If the dress, and it's interesting because even in China, they sold the same bestsellers that we did, but those dresses were no waistline jerseys. What we found is in the products that actually had shape, even though we used their specs that they gave us, the actual body, the form, was more up and down. So on new orders going forward, we now have hired Asian fit models so that we can get the fit corrected. So those are the kinds of challenges. We don't have, and I want to make this point, we don't have execution challenges in terms of exporting. We only ship FOB. The responsibility for landing our goods is always on the account side. So that, after that, we're the merchants, we're the designers, we're the manufacturers. They land the goods, and we're the sellers, obviously.
Thank you. So let's talk about intellectual property and going overseas. Have you had to do anything to protect your intellectual property when you go overseas?
We had already, years ago, thanks to the U.S. Commercial Service, again, I had attended a seminar on intellectual property and branding. And I came back and I said to my boss, if we're planning to go into all these markets, we need to register in each country. No, you don't. I had a lawyer, I own all the brands. Finally convinced him so that we were already registered in China under a different name, by the way, because it's different language. They use different names. And already registered in Russia and ready to go. And we registered in the European Union as a group when we got into QVC in Europe. So that's the most important thing, is registering your brand.
And early on, similar to you, I had a lot of debt coming out of business school and very little money, and every dollar really counts and matters. But I did similar thing where I registered my trademarks in all the countries, because I've heard a lot of horror stories where the name would be stolen by somebody who knew you were getting up and going in the US, and then they would use your name, try to sell it back to you. I heard some stories about China and Taiwan in particular. So when we did it, and again, it was a hard decision, because every dollar counts and you want to put it where it matters, which is your product or your technology. But we also did the same thing and registered trademarks really, really early on. And it takes a lot longer. I think we just got like our China trademark and we registered almost 5 years ago.
Wow.
But you own it. As soon as the application is in, it's trademark pending, but
Right.
it's still worth doing.
See, 10 years ago when we did it, it took, I think, under a year. But today, in those 10 years, there's so many more brands because of the explosion of internet sites like yours, and that business, there's so much registration.
Just going to add that I think trademark, a lot of people, including myself, up until I messed up and learned the hard way, see it as an absolute term. So the fact that you have a trademark does not actually mean that you're protected. The second part comes that you have to protect that trademark, and that's up to your company to do, not the government. So yes, getting trademarks in the different countries is important, and I'll just mention as a side, I think it's been years since I dealt with it. I think it's called the Madrid Protocol, that covers a lot of countries, and then it's advised, A, to get the trademarks in the countries that don't participate in that protocol, but also if you want to strengthen that trademark, to get separate trademarks within each one of the countries that are covered by the Madrid Protocol. Again, because getting trademark, it's a relative term, it's not absolute. And by protecting, I mean that as you have to monitor the trademark and check to see if companies are starting to encroach on your turf, and you kind of create this halo around your trademark, and you just have to decide how big you want that halo to be in your protection. If you spend many years thinking that I'm protected, I have a trademark, and a lot of companies start getting very close, eventually they will actually gain rights to do whatever they're doing, even if they make a product that's kind of close to yours. So yes, get trademarks, but change the thinking of a trademark as a relative term and not absolute. And we learned that the very, very hard way.
I'll just add, I think from a much smaller company perspective, for us, the most important thing is really what we call our intellectual property, and that means directly really relates to our archives. And really, ultimately, we're not as worried about our name protection at this point, even though, we have been told by business people, make sure you trademark your name. I think for us, what we've always made sure to do is that our intellectual property, meaning the patterns we have developed for over the past 7 years, the the technique, the fabrics. You know, since from the very beginning did mostly reversible or convertible fabrics, I had to retrain my factories and the people that worked on our pieces, if it's pattern makers or the manufacturers, how to really look at a garment so that the way it's sewn, it's fully reversible and seamless. And so really these are sort of the techniques and the fabrications that we use, as well as this archive of patterns that really is something that I think when you have a very unique product and a value system, that almost protects you from, you know, someone basically coming and taking part of what you've designed and having it as their own. It almost becomes impossible.
So some of you have mentioned it, but would you like to share with all of our budding entrepreneurs here at FIT some of the tricks, some of the things, you know, shortcuts that they might want to use to getting your products approved in all these multiple locations? Are there any tricks? Is there anything we should know that we don't know?
I don't think there's really a trick. I had been a buyer for multiple New York stores. So my first trip to Germany, just to give you a visual, my boss was in his suit, you know, talking to the buyer, and he said, just unpack the trunks. And I'm there, you know, my makeup is coming off, and I'm kneeling, unpacking these huge coffins with all the samples. But as she was asking the question, he didn't understand them. He didn't understand what she was asking. And I would look up and say an answer when I saw that he didn't get what she was really asking him. So after about the fourth or fifth time that this happened, he finally slowed down, backed away. I stood up and did the rest of the presentation. Understand that buyers all over the world are buyers, just like buyers here in New York or in California or in Texas. They have the same goals. They have the same selling reports. They have the same pressures from their management. So it's really a very symbiotic relationship. So you can't be afraid to pack up a trunk and get involved. The hardest thing you have to do is get the appointment. Obviously, they don't see everybody. They don't have the time to do that. But that's where the U.S. Commercial Service comes in. That's the trick, the U.S. Commercial Service. Because we have, and I'm sure they'll speak to it, we have people in every country who are being paid by the government to get your product in front of the buyers. And that's all you need. Then it's your shot to get in front of that buyer and really connect. Great.
I'm actually going to agree. I was trying to think, because I do have actually tricks. Ask me any other thing. I have a trick for everything. And this one, I was like, damn, what's a trick? And the only thing that I got to before you mentioned it is really the commercial services again, because, yeah, the hardest thing is getting that meeting. And it's tough, especially as a small brand. And the way I phrase it is, this is the single best use of taxpayer dollars I've ever seen in my life, period, ever. And I'm actually going to write, the Congresswoman to try to get her to even expand it further, because with very, very little investment of time and money, you get in front of them. And instead of you as an anonymous company writing these distributors for meeting, it's suddenly the U.S. government or the U.S. embassy who's writing on your behalf. You will even be hosted sometimes in the countries in the actual U.S. embassies or consulate, which is, kind of incredible. So that's the main and probably only trick I can think of. The rest is hard, nitty-gritty work. It's not easy, and you are going to get a lot of no's. I actually say we probably get 99 no's for every one yes, but it's that one yes that you need, and it's that one yes that takes you high enough, so never get discouraged either. I will just mention two things that I think are important. Since these people, exactly as you mentioned, are buyers and they are being chased down and approached by a lot of people, do treat them as a customer. In other words, your presentation materials should be nice, and they should be professional. They should probably be in the language in which, of the country, because that sets you apart from the pack. It shows that you've actually gone out of your way to do something for the country. You've done a little bit of market research. This is a little bit of hack. If you haven't used a site such as Upwork, for example, Upwork.com, you can connect automatically with freelancers everywhere around the world, from anywhere from $5 to $20 an hour. You send it to one person, he translates it. I would recommend to let a second person review it also, like a second contractor, because sometimes they make mistakes. Just the idiosyncrasies of the countries are important.
Also, I wanted to add that along with the U.S. Commercial Service, New York State also has a bureau, and quite recently, last fall, was very helpful for me. Anastasia, I don't remember what the actual name of it is. Is it the Chamber of Commerce? Empire State, okay. They actually were able to get me appointments with 6 huge stores in the UK, and I flew over and presented my products, and was this close to getting an order from Marks and Spencer. And Brexit happened, unfortunately for me. But that's and also people that will help you get your brand in front of the buyers.
We'll add, it's probably important to get a little bit of traction in the United States before you actually approach them and start selling abroad, because if you're just starting out and selling to no one, probably, what do you think? It's still...
I don't know about that. I think that we are now a global economy. And yes, if you have product, they're going to ask you, who do you sell in the United States? But, you know, as I said to someone last night, aim high. You may be the one person that you have a niche business like yours that they don't have that they're looking for. So you just never know.
I would just say, you know, to kind of connect what both of you are saying, is that I think when it comes to maybe first establishing a little bit of a base here, I think that also kind of equates to a little bit of practice in really understanding that your story and the excellence in your product is important. And I think some of the mistakes sometimes are almost better and easier to learn on the ground when it's someone here telling you that, and you can make adjustments rather quickly versus, you know, I mean, we've made many mistakes as well, and some of them are more costly and are bigger investments than others. And I feel like really being out there myself personally, and not just thinking, well, the fashion industry is sort of like, it has a system, and you have your showroom, you have your PR person, you have this. I think you always have to think about what, you know, each and every person's story and how you get it across to a buyer, to a customer, or to building that base of that community that's listening to your value system. That's very important to sort of learn that it all comes, really, it stems from you. And I think it's a little easier to learn on the ground and close to here.
So insourcing in the United States, you've pointed out, has a lot of positives. Are there any negatives to insourcing in the U.S.?
Fabrics.
Money, cost. It's
Cost.
Usually, but not always, more expensive.
I mean, just when it comes to, we manufacture everything in the Garment District in New York City, which is the only way for us when it came to really getting our product to be very specific to our needs, and again, to our voice, and training the people directly. But when it comes to fabrics, I'm, you know, really sourcing up to 80% of my fabrics in Japan. You know, some of my washable leathers in France, and it's really, that's sort of where, you know, we would love to see a lot more mills and a lot more ability to get really high technical fabrics here, but hopefully that can be something that's stimulating to get more of these people here.
I agree also that sometimes you just don't have the stuff in the States. They don't make it. For example, some of our bamboo, we make all our paper and plastic packaging here. Some of our bamboo does come from China, because bamboo kind of comes from China.
Yeah, most of the fabrics that Jump ships are made overseas and voted in. Very rarely do we air anymore, but we do have, one of the bonuses was that we kept the 55 factories he was doing business with 25 years ago before the big changeover to go overseas. So our domestic labor prices really are competitive to manufacturing in China sometimes. So obviously in social occasion, when you have beaded and, you know, high labor intense fabrics, and then they have to be made overseas. But other than that, we have a big advantage because we have a fast turn. There is piece goods that originated in Asia, obviously, but is warehoused in LA and in New Jersey by certain vendors, so that if the piece goods is readily available, we could turn goods for reorders in 5 weeks. We don't like to do that because it kind of upends our production, but 5 weeks is a pretty fast turn, so that's a big advantage about making in the U.S. And our factories are all in the New York City area.
Obviously, this doesn't directly apply to ShopTeeks because we don't make anything. We just help small businesses. But I love working with small businesses that source locally. We have a lot of them. And the reason is usually because the product they produce, if it's down the street from you, is just cooler and more unique. And doesn't have to be just US, by the way. We have boutiques in Israel that produce locally. It's just that personal connection. We talked a little bit about it. If your factories are down the street, if you know the people who are making it. I remember growing up with this weird commercial in Russia, in Kyrgyzstan actually. I was born in Asia. But they said everything that's made with love for people, it will always feel different, right? And so if you're producing locally in whichever country, and it's not necessarily just the big factory in the business and people care about what they're making, you'll always feel that result and it will feel differently.
Great. So as we progress and we're moving more into online and omni-channel marketing, is that having an effect on your international business?
Yes, we love it.
Absolutely, for you.
So we've started, as I said, almost 5 years ago, and from day one we were omni-channel because that's purely what the model is. If you're locally in Paris, you can stop by that store and pick up the same products that if you're sitting on your couch on a Friday night. But it's amazing because now we have customers in Israel who can go down the street and pick up the same products, or they can shop online. And I think that omni-channel is changing, and it should have changed many, many years ago, but people just never thought about it that way. Before internet, it was a phone. I think 1-800-Flowers is one of the best companies that was able to really innovate with every channel. Omni-channel just means you have to think about the end customer. It really is relevant how they consume your goods. What's relevant is why they're buying it, and then the channel is just different. So if I love, ShopTeeks, I can buy on the phone, I can stop by the store and buy at that boutique, or I can buy over the phone. We have a lot of customers who text us orders still, right? And so it's your ability to adapt to whatever that current technology trend. By the way, internet is even the internet changed. It was all desktop. Half of our traffic is now mobile phones, right? And so being able to constantly be innovating your product, and then the way the consumer is consuming your product. I mean, you on QVC, that's the same channel. And so you have to think of that end consumer no matter how they consume it. And I think it's such a mistake by a lot of the big companies to be able to only think about it. It's like, oh, I'm gonna make now an online store and it's gonna feel different than my in-store. Customers are consuming it across all the channels.
I think it changed also transparency, that consumers are highly sophisticated of what, let's say in terms of price. They know exactly what it's selling on every site and in every store. There are some countries, China for example, where they're even more sensitive, and you have to control the different prices that it's sold on every site very, very carefully in order not to turn off buyers. I think there's also, in that regard, there's going to be a shift in terms of marketing, where you have to really consider your global strategy even closer than before, and to have a unified message that is then tailored locally, which is obviously sometimes challenging, that even the big social networks are adapting. I think Facebook in the last couple of months has been rolling out a unified global Facebook brand page that then has multiple sub-brand pages for every country, which just a year or two ago you couldn't do. You have to have a separate Facebook page for every single country, which was kind of crazy. So I think transparency and unified global messaging more important than ever.
For us, the overall impact of e-commerce on all our accounts business was negative, obviously. The stores here in the U.S. are feeling it. Brick and mortar is suffering, and they just can't compete digitally to replace that business. The same goes in Europe and all over the world. So in that way, it was negative. But in the positive realm, when we tried to get into one of the better stores in the UK, she did not have open to buy for brick and mortar, but was asked us, will you take 75 pieces of style so that I could just put it on my website? And of course we said yes, we wanted to enter that market and get into that store. So it's kind of a double-edged sword for us.
And for us, I would say, kind of add to what you were saying, I think that in the luxury price point, I think that most women or men who are buying something that's over $1,000, I don't know about you, but I want to touch it, I want to feel it, I want to try it on, I want to see what I'm investing in. We look at our pieces as, creating this sort of KZ capsule that goes in your closet that you build over time. There's very few women that can go and buy $30,000 worth of clothes at one time. So we have this expectation that all the different points connect. So it's a meeting, it's a phone call, it's a style out, it's a fitting. And then for the ease, that woman could then purchase a piece with us, while I met her at a trunk show in Atlanta. And then, a month later, she could say, well, now I'm ready for the pair of cigarette pants to go with that jacket, and go on our website. And it really is something that sort of fills in, the overall relationship building that happens over time, which, as you were saying, I love that you said that, even texting, it is, however the customer is really willing to connect and wants to connect, that's sort of, what we're open to. And, you have to know that business happens kind of 24/7 and in all different formats.
If I can add also just one other thing about omni-channel distribution. You kind of have to decide what type of company are you building. Is it an online/tech company, or a traditional CPG company, or somewhere in between, where the lines over the last couple of years have been blurring? So for example, Glacier, which is a cosmetic company which gets a lot of buzz, they are basically online only, and so they are basically building a tech company, even though they are a CPG company. Birchbox, which obviously gets a lot of buzz, is another example. In theory, it's CPG, but it's actually more tech, but then they are trying to open retail stores as well, so where are they? And that will affect you also, especially if you want to raise capital, for example. You're suddenly talking about a whole different set of investors and of potential exits. So in traditional CPG, an exit might be 3x. So let's say if you're making $1 million, your company might be bought for $3 million. If you're tech, suddenly you're talking about multiples of 10 to 20x for the same exact company, just because you decided to build a subscription model online. So I think, putting thought about what type of company you're building, but also keeping an open mind to a pivot along the way if something is working or not working is worth consideration.
You also have to be smart about how big the business is, because Birchbox is a very different business than just a brand that you might be starting out. And they're getting 10 times, not because they're a brand or they're a tech company, just because the opportunity has a much larger size of the business rather than an individual brand can.
Possibly true, but then you look at the brands such as Warby Parker or Glossier, and there's a lot of example of the Dollar Shave Club of brands that have
They have
built
not exited yet, though. Warby Parker.
True. I'm just talking in terms of investment in their current valuation. You're right that they haven't exited, but they probably will one day. But just in terms of their valuation on the street for investors, it's numbers that previously we couldn't even have imagined for a traditional CPG company, I think.
Yeah, but you also saw One Kicks Lane, and there's a lot in Nasty Gal and all those bad examples. So
There are bad examples.
I think that valuation on the street means nothing. What really is important is, are you actually making money and how big the market is at the end of the day?
Absolutely agreed.
So before we open it up to questions from the audience, because I'm sure you all have lots of questions for our panelists, is there anything else in terms of best practices that you want to share?
I think it starts with people. I wish somebody told me this because I started my career in finance on Wall Street, and then I was at Wellesley and then at Harvard Business School. Everybody around me were the most driven people who wanted to succeed so much, and I think that I expected everybody to have the same drive, and I never checked for it in the beginning. And so I think I wish all of you to learn from my mistakes and figure out what kind of person you are, and then figure out what kind of people you want to be around with, what kind of drive they want to have, what, everything about that, and start hiring really early on for those exact type of people, or whatever people you like, so that your team from the beginning will be the team that will stay with you for the rest of the time, because anything team related is just the most important. You're not going to get to do everything yourself. The sooner you can realize, the better, and hire really the most incredible people, because they will determine the success of your business.
I would only add, speaking of people, that we're in a technical age and we're so used to getting in touch with people through email and other Twitter and all these digital ways. You still need face-to-face relationships, and they count so much. And when I was pulled out and promoted up and away from my international businesses, and a younger person took over, we started losing accounts. And we made a lot of mistakes, I found out when I finally got involved in it. But the personal relationship I had with that buyer allowed me to get right back in with another order because of the face-to-face relationship. Please don't discount that. Okay.
I think I'd maybe mention two things. First thing that comes to mind for me is packaging, which I discounted at the beginning. I think one of the first calls I had when I was getting into the industry was the CEO of Sweet Riot. They made these little chocolates that weren't really exceptional, but they put them in these special little pretty cans. And I just had okay packaging. It was nothing wrong with it, but nothing that stood out, and honestly, it didn't sell. And then we switched to this bamboo packaging, and wow. So packaging. Second thing is really don't take no for an answer. That's really it. People are going to tell you no all the time, and again and again and again. If you believe in what you're doing, do it anyway. I mean, listen, but do it anyway. I can't even tell you how many no's. People have told me you're not going to get a natural market. Yes, we are in the natural market. It's cosmetics is oversaturated, you're not going to be able to do it. Yes, we are doing it. You could do anything you set your mind to, so don't take no.
Yay.
But also, if I can mention, by the way, entrepreneurship, yeah, it is talked about in the press, and people kind of idealize them, but it also, it sucks when you're on the street. It's nitty and gritty, and you have to, be with it in your heart, really. So ask yourself, how ready are you for it? Are you ready to be poor for many years? Are you ready to go bankrupt? Are you ready to fail multiple times? Most entrepreneurs who've made it have failed multiple times. How ready are you?
Many times a day.
Yeah, lots.
You have
Lots.
one moment of happiness, and it carries you to the next day.
Yep.
And the next day.
Yeah, that's true. But when you're in it, I'm sure you remember all the same thing. It's stressful, and there are a lot of days, and you're by yourself on the top. You have no one, really talk to, and sometimes you're like, oh my God, what did I do? But it's awesome at the same time. So, yeah.
Yeah, to that point, when I started, I got the best advice from my mentor, who said, if you got a good phone call, don't pick up the next one. It's going to be bad news, guaranteed.
Okay, thank you very much. And now can we have questions from the audience? Anybody? Yep. She's going to bring you a mic. Good.
My question is for Josh. Okay. So you're in the cosmetics and kind of industry, and you're saying that you're selling in China. How do you address the fact that in China there are laws that you have to test on animals?
So just that's a great question. Just in terms of background, China forces you to test on animals if you are a foreign manufacturer. Or if you're a local manufacturer, you don't need to test on animals, which is a bit of a trade barrier that the government is trying to work to change. So the truth is that a lot of the big companies, they say we don't test on animals, but then you look in the legal disclaimer on the bottom, and they said, except where legally required, which basically means they do torture little bunnies in order to sell into China. So you can be aware of that as a consumer. So there's two answers to that. There's a growing industry, and that's the one that the channel that we're playing in is cross-border e-commerce, where basically you have, if you're any international company, you can sell direct to consumer. And you can circumvent all those laws, and that's okay by the Chinese government as well. So what you do, you actually ship your products to these what's called bonded warehouses in free trade zones in China. They still consider it as if it's in the United States for regulatory purposes, but what it allows you to do is ship to a Chinese consumer within a day or two. So that's kind of a workaround. You're correct that we cannot sell in stores because we don't torture animals, and we will never change that. And at the same time, we're also working to lobby to make that change. I'll also mention a different workaround, and that some American companies do as well. Even though they manufacture in the States, they can choose to have a local manufacturer in China for the Chinese market. Then they can get into stores without testing on animals.
Okay, anybody else?
Hi. My question is actually for either Joanne, Olga, or Josh. In going into international markets, what challenges have you had with their compliance requirements that differ from ours? Either is safety regulations or labeling? I'd like you to speak to that. Thanks.
Okay. We obviously, what Josh said is correct. We have less regulation here in the States than they do in other countries. But all those regulations are spelt out when you get the first order. They send you a manual, and we do testing. And we do testing with international bureaus, Bureau Veritas, Interstoff, Intertech. The challenge we had was really with China, because at first, the testing, I mean, we do it in every country. We know what it costs. And originally, the Chinese CNR Mall wanted us to test one garment, which was what we test for everyone else. And that test was even cheaper when we first started with them. It was $100 a style. So you're prorating it over 500 pieces. It's no big deal. And $100 comparatively, most of our tests in Germany are like $200 to $300 a style. And all of a sudden, as our business grew, all of a sudden they needed 5 garments per style, per color. So instead of sending, only a few pieces over, it became a serious investment to even do the testing. So that was a problem. Translation-wise, as I mentioned, we had some bumps, but now we just force them to approve it before we actually put the label in the garment. But it's very easy. It's very doable. I mean, there are agencies all over the world that will help you, and the account itself will give you the information.
In the beginning, when we just started and had, didn't really have time or money to go to big law firms to help, there's a lot of information on just the government websites that is available, and there's actually great support. Like I know when we were looking at the UK. There's a delegation, the UK delegation in the US, that's trying to invite more US companies to expand there. They can help you with a lot of legal regulation. For example, there's a lot in Europe with collecting email addresses and cookies that you have to display on the site when a customer goes in. When we started growing globally, we had a really great legal team. We made sure to kind of research a lot of that up front so that you're compliant. And I think it's really important. I mean, if you're really small, you can go under the radar, but like once you start doing any meaningful business, they'll really go after you, and I would recommend not expanding somewhere unless you really do your work.
Anybody else? Yeah. We have somebody all the way up here.
My question is for Josh. How did you first start getting the word out about your product when you first getting started?
So she was asking how we first started spreading the word. That's a great question. And when we interview potential people, we ask them really. So let's say hypothetically you were in charge of a new line of products. How do you get there? How to get it out there? What do you think their first answer is? Social media. Everyone says social media first thing, but truth is it's not. Every company has social media, very few companies actually succeed. So it's obviously not that easy. We took, at the beginning, the more traditional approach. We hired a PR company, and they got us into a bunch of magazines, and honestly, for us, that did nothing. And we realized we're younger. Our target demographic is also younger, and new age media was the thing that worked for us best. So we have partners such as Birchbox and Ipsy, for example, who have helped us. We've given up probably a total of 1 million samples with these companies. We have JetBlue is a partner of ours, so they're giving one of our products to every single business class passenger. So that's sampling, and the large sampling programs are one way to do it. So sure, you could give out samples at trade shows, but it's not very scalable. So look for a scalable way to give out samples. Working with online influencers is an obvious answer as well. And for us, that works too. I would just mention, so you have two different main types of social media influencers, those that are not paid and those who are paid. Typically anyone with under, say, 20,000 followers is not paid. Those above might take money. Maybe starts at like $100, $200 for the small ones. It obviously goes up to many thousands for the big ones. I'll just mention to be very, very careful. A lot of them are not real. It is so easy to game social media, and we learned this also the hard way. A lot of these people pay algorithms basically to generate likes, and the algorithms have become so sophisticated that they can also pay not only to get followers and likes, to get comments by robots. And it's not real. Most of the people out there are not real, or have a mix of real and not real. So just become sophisticated and look at the actual engagement that they get with consumers. So how many likes they are getting per photo, how many comments are they getting? Are the comments repeating themselves, or are they actual comments by real humans, et cetera? So bottom line, working with sampling programs for us, which is scalable, and influencers is what's working for us, and being on stores, actually.
So I have a question. Did you ever approach stores directly?
Yeah, and that's why I added it. So just the fact of being on a store is basically free advertisement. So sure, customers can buy from there, but just by virtue of being on store shelves, you're absolutely correct, is advertisement in and of itself. So that is definitely the third way.
Do we have any more questions? Yeah.
My question's for Olga. I'm familiar with Shopteeks, and with such an innovative business model, I'm sure you've seen a lot of competition. How do you differentiate yourself from them?
Well, we sell clothing, so we really compete against everybody who is out there selling clothing. You know, if you don't buy on Shopteeks, you're not gonna go naked. So we fight for that share of the wallet. So from day one when I started, it was about that. So the difference was inventory. I think, 10 years from now, there'll not be that many department stores. It will really consolidate, and we're already seeing that with Yoox and Net-a-Porter and a lot of other consolidation that's happening in the industry. That's because if you're selling Marc Jacobs, the consumer is going to go wherever there's the cheapest Marc Jacobs brand. Or Amazon, right? Like at the end of the day, Amazon just suppressed Macy's by a huge amount in terms of retail sales. But then you look at Etsy that 10 years in did $1 billion in GMV, and you look at Net-a-Porter that did 10 years in $300 million in GMV, selling the same brands. What's the difference? The biggest one is unique product. If you are selling something that consumer cannot find anywhere else online, people will come to your brand, right? That's why people used to go to Bloomingdale's, because there was upcoming designers that they couldn't find at Macy's or Saks. And so Shopteeks does that through unique boutiques that we work with. So we just expanded to Israel. I've never heard any single brand that we sell from Israel that these boutiques carry. That gets me excited, because I know that the women come to Shopteeks, they want something unique. They don't typically want the same brands that everybody around them is wearing. And so as long as we can maintain the unique inventory, and that means really helping small businesses discover unique local brands, We are exclusive with the boutiques, so if you sell on Shoptiques, you can be selling on Amazon or Etsy or eBay, anywhere else. So preserving those relationships and really caring about the small businesses and helping them be successful, as long as they have a unique product. I really believe that women will continue wanting to be unique and different, and if that's a thesis of who we are, then at the end of the day, we'll have a big business. And we're just an extension of our boutiques. We really help them kind of extend that relationship with the in-store. I really believe the in-store, in-person experience that they build with their customers is the most powerful thing. In terms of competitors, as I said, we compete really with everybody in terms of the share of the wallet. In terms of the boutiques, there is really nobody who's doing anything like we are doing for them, because while on the front end, it's all consumer-centric, buy unique clothing and shop the world. On the back end, we do all the boring work. So the more boring work we can do, the less competition there will be. Like, we do photo shoots in our studio in New York that's actually 2 blocks away. We shoot over 400 products a day, and nobody has been able to do that. But it seems scary for big retailers to jump in and shoot something that's only available in quantity of 3, right? And so as long as we continue to really have logistical kind of advancements that we are able to do, nobody will want to compete, because it's a really thin margin business.
I kind of have an open question to whoever would like to answer. With the experience you now have, and I know you mentioned that failure is kind of inevitable, and I know it's part of the growth process, but is there one thing that you would like, that if you could, you would change or do differently?
Great question. I think that earlier on, what I would do differently would be to spend more time with my family. I think the first 3 years, I don't think I've seen any of my friends or family, because I was so focused on what I was doing. But then again, I would give that advice to people around me now, but I wouldn't change a thing. Every failure drove the business forward. I think the biggest learning I did from that was just how important every single person in your company is, because hiring a bad hire, even if they're smart but bad attitude, can set you up 6 months, and every single person on your team matters. So that would be the biggest learning, but I still would not change a single thing that I've made mistakes on. On the next business, then, I would definitely try to avoid all the mistakes.
I think I already mentioned packaging, and I agree with you that personal time is important, and know that it does take a hit. My personal life definitely did take a bit of a step back. I'd say, when I first started out, I attended a bunch of panels as well, and I don't know why, but all 3 of my first panels, the panelists said, get a co-founder, because, entrepreneurship, it's really kind of like this roller coaster. And sometimes, when you're down, it helps to have someone by your side who takes you back up. In my case, I didn't bump into anyone that worked when I was doing it. A bunch of it is luck and timing, so I didn't have one. But all 3 panels that I attended when I was starting to learn about entrepreneurship, they all literally said the same thing: get a co-founder if you can. Having a co-founder has its own drawbacks. Obviously, of course, I could just make up my mind and decide, and that's it. With a co-founder, you have to negotiate, but sometimes that negotiation is actually good. So, co-founder.
I will agree with that. My partner in the business is also my partner in life, so I get some personal life because of that. But definitely, one of the biggest questions that I get asked is what advice, and I completely agree that having a second person in the business, who I think it's important when that person disagrees with you, it helps you to sort of vet and sort of talk through, things as you go. And, for example, if I come from FIT, I had this sort of specific way of thinking of how my business should look like. And all along, my partner's idea was a little bit different. He came from the architecture world. And so it sort of was always nice that, my idea of how it should be and his idea of how it should be was different. And as our business progresses, there's definitely a lot of fights that go on, but I think those are very positive to get sort of on a good track and have the support on an everyday basis.
I think you mentioned a good point that maybe someone who's not too similar to you. So don't get another you, get someone who complements you, which it sounds like you might have.
Okay, well, thank you all very much. Let's thank our panelists. It's 2 o'clock. They're throwing us out of Katie Murphy. Thank you all for coming, and I hope you enjoyed it.